Well, we're at my desktop showing historic Scotland. What are we doing here? Well, some people have been asking me how to get in on Doom editing as the result of my videos, which is fantastic that people want to give it a try. I think it's a really satisfying environment to make things in, so I wanted to put together this quick guide to getting set up and maybe doing a basic map. So on the you will need list, you will need a copy of Doom, or more specifically what you're looking for is an IWAD, which is one of the data files from Doom. It stands for Internal WAD, and that is the file that contains all the resources of the game, the maps, the enemies, sprites, textures, and so on. Doom 1 came with a WAD file, Doom 2 came with another WAD file that had more monsters in it, it had different maps, a few new textures, and so on. Heretic, where it's all fantasy-based, is a completely separate WAD file with its own enemies and textures, and so on. So if you want to edit for the original Doom games, and you don't already have these, you can get the entire suite on Good Old Games or Steam. This one's the Good Old Games listing, which is actually quite a lot more expensive than the Steam listing. You have to purchase Doom 2 plus Final Doom and then the original Doom 1 separately. If you go over to Steam, then it's all together. Let me just put that up again, because they're very eager to tell me about their summer sale. Doom 2. If you look for Doom 2, then they also have this Doom Classic Complete Pack, which has Doom 2, Final Doom, Master Levels of Doom 2, Ultimate Doom, which is just everything. And that's just $7.49 just now. If for any reason you don't have access to either of those, you can also download the WAD for Freedoom, which is freedoom.github.io, and this acts as a substitute for the Doom 1 and Doom 2 WADs. It's a free version, all the monsters have been replaced with their own monsters, it's got its own maps, but it basically replicates all the data that's in a Doom 1 or Doom 2 WAD, so you can load custom levels onto it in the same way as you could the commercial copies. So, having got whichever WAD file you want, you're going to need a way to run the game. The downloads from Steam or GOG will contain the original DOS.exe files with a shell around them, which works, but it's not really the most convenient way to run Doom these days. Instead, there are multiple different source ports on various platforms. There's one called Chocolate Doom, which tries to keep very traditional. Let's see. Yep, here it is, chocolatedoom.org. Alternatively, the one that I really like is ZDoom, or GZDoom, as it's known today. So Chocolate Doom tries to keep very traditional. ZDoom is very much at the other end of the scale. This adds tons of features on top of the base Doom. Loads of scripting and better ability to drop in your own content on top of maps and so on. I like using GZDoom. You can get that here, but again, it depends on your preference. Once you've got your copy of Doom and your way in which to run it, you'll want to unzip GZDoom somewhere, and you will want to point GZDoom at the WAD files where your Doom folder is. If I look at my own GZDoom directory in Games GZDoom, you can see I've got quite a cluttered folder here. This is very much the computer equivalent of the studio around me just now, which is an absolute tip. But somewhere in here, you can see that I've just copy and pasted the WADs that I got from Doom into here. So I've got Doom WAD, Doom2.wad, there'll be Heretic somewhere. If you want to be able to find those, and if you've installed over Steam, you can... It's finicky today, isn't it? Let's view the games library. Doom 2, Doom 2, Doom 2. You know, 90% of these things, don't know where they came from, never played. I think there's more gameplay here than my natural life remaining. Okay, Doom 2 Hell on Earth. So let's go to Properties. Let's go to Local Files and browse Local Files. So this has taken me onto my music drive, which is a bit of a surprise, but I set up a Steam library there. And it's all the way down if you drill into Steam Apps Common Doom 2, base, there's Doom 2 WAD. That's the file that you want. Okay, so you copy and paste that into wherever you have installed GZDoom, and you can start it up from there. GZDoom will look for all the IWAD files that it can possibly find, and it'll prompt you for a list of games that you want to play from. We're going to select Doom 2 Hell on Earth for now. And as you were just about to expect, Doom 2 starts up. This is the first level as it was originally presented in the 1994 copy of Doom 2, just a bit smartened up by the confines of GZ Doom around it. Alright, so far that's unsurprising. We can equally start up the same thing, just select a different Doom WAD, and we'll suddenly be playing a different game, even though these originally were two separate games and they didn't have a common exe between them. Okay, that is very quickly how to get Doom up and running. Once you've got that, you're going to need to get yourself a Doom editor, and I'm going to recommend two different ones. The first one is SLADE 3, which is at slade.mancubus.net. Once you unzip and install it, it looks a bit like this. This is just opening the data file from Sigil, which John Romero recently released. This is something you use to organize your own resources like textures, maps and things that add to the ones of the iWAD. You can see there are some different graphics files for level titles here, title screen graphics, end graphics and so on. So we never edit the iWADs directly. Instead, what we do is we write a separate WAD, a patch WAD or PWAD. Sigil is an example of one of those. And that's going to be loaded alongside an iWAD. In Sigil's case, it's intended to be loaded alongside the Doom.wad. SLADE 3 is all-in-one. It's got this list of resources within a WAD file, the music and everything. It's got its own map editor, which I might be able to open up here. Yeah, it's got its own map editor. So if you're on Linux or a Mac, you're likely going to be using this all-in-one. But the second one, the one that I want to concentrate on, is an editor for Windows with the catchy name of GZ Doom Builder Bug Fix. It's the latest in a long branching family of Doom editors that started with Doom Builder, and it has a lot more support for the extended stuff that the source port GZ Doom lets you do. So this one, it's at devbuilds.drdteam.org, gzdbbf. And these are all the development builds. Just get the latest one, it'll update itself. This is just a map editor, which makes it good to start off with, I think, because you don't have to worry about all the structure of a WAD file. So if that's all you want to do, that's fine, that's where most people start, but if you also want to import your own textures and so on, you might be using this and SLADE 3 alongside each other. If you're into very strictly classic maps, you might even want to use Doom Builder 2, which is getting on a bit now. I think it might be more than 10 years old, but some people still swear by that for making vanilla compatible maps. It's an old editor, but it's a very reliable one. Alright, so let's get all this together and set it up. I have newly installed GZ Doom Builder somewhere. Here it is, gzdbbf toot for tutorial. So I'm going to walk through setting up Doom Builder for the first time. Alright, so we've got our nice splash screen, Pinky model provided by T-Monster. And we are going to go to Tools and Game Configurations first. Alright, so this is a list of map formats that are supported by GZ Doom. Just a few of them are checked at first because these are the ones that you're most likely to be wanting to use. Long story short, the Doom 2 format, Doom 2 Doom format, might bear a bit of explanation. Doom 2 is just the name of the game. It's a Doom-style map. Doom format means that it's the format that matched how levels were stored in the original copy of Doom. At the other end of the scale, there's UDMF, which stands for Universal Doom Map Format, and that's a file format that was come up with by the Doom editing community to try to standardize a lot of the things that the extended ports like GZ Doom did. So it's a plain text format, which makes it very easily compressible, and it makes it very easily readable as well without having to use this proprietary format. So we're going to use UDMF because I think it's easier to start without all the restrictions that the original Doom format puts on you. It can be quite difficult to understand what you have to limit yourself to if you're using the original Doom format. Alright, so what we need to do is describe to GZ Doom Builder what we want to happen when we're editing a UDMF map. So what we want to do is we want to be able to use the resources from Doom 2. So we're going to add our resource. It's going to let us select from WAD files or directories or PK3s, which I'll cover possibly in the distant future. We're going to open and we're going to select doom2.wad. Okay, and that's in our resources list now. Node Builder, you don't have to worry about it set up for you. It's the tool that translates a level into a binary space partition, which is how it's rendered in 3D. Testing we do want to think about, because this has already been set up for me, but it's likely you'll have no engines here. We want to tell GZ Doom Builder that we're going to be using the GZ Doom engine or Chocolate Doom or whatever we have downloaded. So you're going to click the plus icon, you're going to go to your GZ Doom directory, gzdoom.exe, and it'll get it from there. Alright, so let's OK to that. Let's file a new map. We're going to select UDMF, script type, let's worry about that later, and level name. There's no restriction on what you call your levels, although I wonder if this limits it to 8 characters. It does limit it to 8 characters. That's good, because that's what the WAD format supports. Level name is a free text field, but you'll generally want to stick with map 01 if you're writing for Doom 2, because map 01 is by default the first level that Doom 2 loads when you start it up. We've got our resource that we defined earlier in here. We can also add resources per load if we want to do a map for something else. But for now that's fine, and we're going to click OK. Alright, so if an error message has just appeared for you, complaining about a duplicate patch, don't worry about that. It's because some copies of Doom 2 actually have a mistake in them where a patch, which is just a patch of graphics for making textures, is defined twice with the same name, but you'll never notice it in gameplay, but GZ Doom Builder is intelligent enough to pick up on that. So we've got a nice blank space here. Let's start filling it with some stuff. I should admit fully now that we are firmly entering the wing it portion of this video. You've got everything you need to just set up and get going just now, but I'm going to try to talk my way through crafting a simple, very short map in this tool. So, unlike Unreal or Unity or any of the modern game engines, we don't need to go through a tutorial first. This is really all you get. We can right-click and just start drawing. And we've got a square room. There we go. Doom is based on lines. You'll see the level as a floor plan the entire time, and it's based on forming these lines to make sectors, which are portions of the level that are like vertical slices of level, and it's then about putting what it calls things into those sectors, which are the objects like the player and enemies and weapons and ammunition and so on. So let's switch over to Things mode. We could also just press T, but I want to make sure I'm doing all this visually. We're going to double click in this sector. Default thing is a player 1 start. Let's make it face that way. And we have a playable level. Believe it or not, this will play in Doom 2. If we use the source port that we set up here, we go to Hurt Me Plenty difficulty. Here we are. This is our level so far. I didn't say it was an impressive one, but it's a workable Doom level. Alright, so we can start thinking about how to make this more interesting. So I'm actually going to reduce the size of this room quite significantly. I've gone over to Vertices Mode here, so I'm working on the vertices that connect the lines, and I'm just going to drag them around so that they form a much less large room, and something with a bit more of an interesting shape to it. Having done that, I'm going to go over to Things Mode, just drag my player around. Let's see, what can we do here? We could start in this little alcove and have a bit of a bigger room to go into here. That's not so much what I want, so let's put this out a bit. Maybe I'll make some kind of archway. I'll put another sector up here. I missed. I can drag that vertex in. Maybe let's have a door going over there. Let's have another section to that room. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm just either right-clicking to start drawing, or if I want to draw on an existing vector, I can just hit Ctrl-D to get a cursor to tell it where to start drawing. So each sector has its own definition of floor and ceiling heights and the textures that you can put onto that floor or ceiling. In the older days, what we needed to do, if I go over to Linedefs mode with L, is we needed to click on each of these walls individually. We needed to look at the texture that it was displaying. We had to change that texture, maybe not tech wall, tech green maybe. That was one of the new textures in Doom 2, I think, and that's a nice sort of tech-based style texture. We had to look at the properties of each wall. We had to copy and paste that around. We could go into sectors mode, say, okay, now I want the floor of this bit to be 0 and the ceiling height to be 128, but this one should be a bit shorter than that. We'll put that one down to 64. And we had to do all this spatial arithmetic in our head in order to make levels. Fortunately, the modern world has caught up with us, and here we can just hit Q to go into this 3D editing mode. Okay, so this is that wall that I put the tech green texture on. This is the sector that I said the ceiling should be at height 64 instead of 128, so it's lowered a bit and it's left us missing textures up here. So let's start decorating this a bit better. Let's Control-C to copy a texture as you'd expect. Control-V can paste it, or alternatively you can just middle-click and it makes it a bit faster. There are also a ton of shortcuts that you can use. If we shift left-click on a wall, then it'll select all the textures that are adjacent to it and identical, and we can change the texture that way. Let's see, it's a bit boring having all flat floors, so like I said, we could go into the 2D view and select the sector and then adjust its floor ceiling heights manually, but we can do it a bit more easily. We can select the floor of the sector and we can just scroll our mouse wheel up to put a bit of a step on that. Let's right click on this line from within the 3D view and we get exactly the same edit line def window that we got in the 2D view. And this is the texture that's missing. It'll mark it with this warning sign if a texture is missing. So the textures that begin with step are usually quite good for filling out things like that. Let's make that a metallic approach, and let's control and right click this time on this floor instead of just right click, which will bring us straight to the texture editing window. And give it some of that nice hexagonal techie look. Alright, what else can we do here? This ceiling's looking a bit woody, so let's shift click on that, so we select all the adjacent textures as well, and we're going to make this look a bit more modern as well. Maybe let's use this blue ceiling. I don't know. An interior designer probably wouldn't give this room an A grade, but it's a start for us. Okay, so we've got this overhang that's caused by the sector being a different height. We've got this step. We can do a couple more things. Maybe I actually want to delete this sector now that I've made it, which will cause a hole in the middle. And a hole is a void and will form walls around itself. I'm just Control-C on that texture, middle click on that one to form the wall as well. You'll notice that these are looking a bit squint here because the texture is drawn from the top down for every wall. Again, it's something that you could go through manually. You can use the up and down arrows within the 3D view. You can use shift up and down to shift them a bit more at one time. Or you could point yourself at any wall, hit Control-A, and it'll do it all for you, which is great. Alright, so we've got the beginnings of a room here. Let's spruce some of this up. So what we could do, we could put a computer console embedded in one wall. This is a nice way to kind of spice up rooms and make them make walls look not as boring. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag that floor up with the middle mouse wheel. We're going to drag that ceiling down. So you have to think about levels as these vertical slices that are gaps between the floor height and the ceiling height. It can be hard to get your head around at first, but it begins to make some sense after you've been doing it for 4 or 5 years. Let's just use Comp Tall here. That's a good sort of jumble of textures. Let's actually move this a bit. I can press V, highlight these, drag it out a bit, and now that looks a bit better. Control A, again, aligns them fine, and we could edit some of these textures around it to make it look less like it's part of a wall. So I've used the doorstop texture here. It's already offset. You can see at the bottom of the screen it's offset 2632 because I already did some wall alignment when that was still a Tech Gren texture. To undo all of that, again, we could try to fix it like this, but if you hit Control-Shift-R, that'll just reset all the offsets and do it quickly for you. For here, we could use some kind of neutral grey flat for the computer. Alright. What else can we do to this level? Well, one of the interesting things about Doom is that you can also give sectors different brightness levels. If we look at the sector properties here, in Sectors mode, hit S, we can see ceiling height, floor height, we can see the resultant sector height, we can see some effects on brightness. So let's make this sector quite bright, but as we go further in, let's start bringing that brightness down. I might say that this will be brightness just 160. Over here, maybe there's a shadow, so I'm going to drop that down to 128 and then 160 again over here. The computer, I'm going to keep that very bright. Might even put it up a bit to 200 just to make it look like light's coming from that computer. Alright, so let's save this WAD. And I'm going to put this in my GZ Doom directory. I'm going to call it tutor2.wad because I did a practice run of this video before, which I don't really want to keep. Okay. Tutor2.wad is saved. We can test the map again. And there we go. We've got our shadow going under this little stoop here. The shadow continues around there, which shouldn't really happen because that doesn't really look like it should have a shadow. And we've got the bright computer over there and the bright little alcove we came from. Looks good. Let's start populating this thing. So first of all, actually I want to adjust this. I can just drag this down as well. Put a texture on it, align everything. And that looks passable. So, maybe once we come into this map, there's someone waiting for us with a shotgun. I always get this wrong. I always try to call them shotgun guy, but they're actually called sergeants internally here. So we'll put him round here so he doesn't see us immediately, but he will be alerted if we make a noise to wake him up or we step into his line of fire. And we'll have some former humans, which are the lowest form of enemy here. Again, Control-C, Control-V, just like in anything else, except Emacs, where it's Control, Backspace, Alt, Shift, Paste, Beta. Sorry, joke for people who grew up in the 70s there. Yeah, so you can copy and paste just as you would normally. Let's see, what do I want to do with this level? Maybe, so around here... Oops, that was a missing texture because I didn't put one on there. Maybe we want to show the player there's a blue door over here that they need to get through. So I won't make the blue door just now, but I'm going to put the blue key up here so that we have some target just now. So Control-D again, let's add another sector. That'll just about do. And what I want this sector to do is I want this to be raised up off the ground. So I'm going to scroll the floor up. I'm going to maybe put some... comp word texture onto that. Alright, so how are we going to get up to that? Well, we could put a staircase in there. And that's just a series of sectors that have different floor and ceiling heights once again. That might be a bit thin, it's only 64 units wide, so I'm going to thicken that up a bit. That'll just about do. By the way, you can use tools in GZ Doom Builder for and SLADE and everything for working out curves like this automatically. They didn't have that in the original Doom days, so a lot of default Doom levels have these kind of wonky hand-drawn staircases. So it can be a deliberate effect if you want. All right, so let's start dragging the floors down here. Let's select all of them, and there. And that'll do. So we've got some missing textures. Let's select them all. Control and right click. Go to a step texture. Let's use this one this time. Alright. And to make the level look a bit more dynamic, we can also change the floor texture up here so you feel more like you're in a different area. Alright. So what we're going to put on here. Maybe the blue key is tantalizingly within reach in this first room, but we can't quite get to it. So let's put another sector in here because I want to be altering the height of just a bit of the room. And I'm going to make another kind of computer unit. Let's use a different flat for its floor. I'm not entirely fluent with the flat names in Doom, so I'm basically guessing. Is there a comp flat? I can't even remember. Oh, flats and textures, by the way. In the original Doom, they were stored differently. That is, textures that go on floor and ceilings are flats. Textures that go on walls are textures. As far as GZ Doom is concerned, it doesn't care. It can apply both to both, as long as you're using UDMF map format. Let's see. So let's just use something called floor. Maybe I'll just use this hexagonal one again. All right. So we've got a couple of enemies. Press T to go into things mode again. We've got a blue key card. And let's make sure we can see the blue key card from this alcove as well. So I'm going to put a little window into here by adding another sector. Maybe just bump that up a little so that it's a separate wall of its own. And let me see. Like I said, I'm just making this up as I go along. Nothing special. I just want to make sure that this is visible from that sector because I want a switch here to lower that blue key. How we're going to do that is we're going to do another little alcove on here. And that's going to be a separate sector, and that's going to hold our switch. So we've control right clicked again, and we're going to type SW1 down here because SW1 is the traditional name to put all your switches into. And there's some code in the background that will take SW1 switches when they're pressed, and it will then replace them in-game with an SW2 texture instead, which are all these equivalents of the switches, but they've obviously been switched. Alright, let's put this one on there. Now you can see that this isn't quite tall enough to accommodate that, so we're going to shift the texture around manually like I showed a bit ago. We're just going to hit shift and up until we get a switch visible on that wall. Let's go down here again, let's apply the doorstop textures to the edges, and that's going to be our switch. But how are we going to tell that switch to affect this sector here? Well, this is when we apply actions and sector tags. What we're going to do is we're going to right click on that sector and we're going to give it a tag, and this is an identification number that the engine is going to use to say, okay, this switch needs to affect this sector. Very easy, hit new, just type in 1, whatever you do, this is the first tagged sector, okay, and it'll show up as tag 1 now that we've tagged it. Another thing that I might want to do, just incidentally, is because these look like they're kind of chopping off into nowhere, I might just align those as well and put that texture on them so that it looks like there's some kind of substance that's bordering that wall. No real rules about how you texture things. It's really according to preference. Alright. Let's go back to this switch. I've pressed L now to get into Linedefs mode. And a line def is, well, in human terms, it's a line. Alright, we're going to edit this Linedef. We can see that we've got this texture on the front, and these are our properties. So, we want to do something with this when the player presses use. We don't want this to be a repeatable action, we want this to only happen once. And the action we want to take is we want the computer that I showed you earlier to lower into the floor, which means there's a bucket load of actions that you can take, and a lot of these are parameterized, meaning that you can then alter their behavior after selecting one. But we'll go with floor, and we'll say floor lower to nearest floor. That's what we want to do. So the computer texture will keep on, the computer sector will keep on going down until it encounters another floor beside it, and then it'll stop. Sector tag. What sector do we want to affect? We want to affect sector 1. Our movement speed is going to be, yeah, let's say normal. We could do it slowly or normal fast turbo, and no other arguments have any effect for this particular action. Okay, so again, Linedefs can also have tags, but the tag of the Linedef is unrelated to the tag of the sector that Linedef is in. So don't worry about that. We've tagged our sector, and this is our sector tag that we're affecting. Helpfully, GZ Doom Builder will now draw a line from here to here whenever we hover over it, so we're reminded that this affects this. Let's just see that in action. So now we've got our room, we've got our first enemy, who'll conveniently drop a shotgun, which we can use to finish off these. We've got some stairs to climb. We can see the blue key through there. And we can hear, and we can see that that blue key has now lowered, and we can get it. Great! But that's a bit easy. I think we should add some more monsters as well when that blue key lowers, so that we can't just clear them out and then wander over to the key at our leisure. So let's also add an obstacle here. Let's add a sector. And we're going to put some enemies behind it. This is going to be what's colloquially known in Doom as a monster closet. We're going to release some imps, let's say. Just a couple, so that they get the point. Alright. So here are our imps. We want to shut them away first so that they're not part of the level and the player doesn't know about them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this floor and I'm going to scroll it all the way up, all the way up, all the way up until it's equal to the ceiling. And then I'm going to put this texture over them, realign my textures so that there's no indication that there's something there, and the imps are happily sealed in here until it's their time to shine. What am I going to do with that sector? I'm going to tag this sector as one as well. So now when you press that switch, it's going to lower the blue key for you, but it's also going to lower the door on these imps and they're going to be able to get you. Alright. So we need somewhere to actually use the blue key. Let's do a simple door over here. What I'm going to do is do 3 sectors. Each 16 units wide, 128 long. Beyond that, I'm going to have another smallish room. By the way, I've been sticking to quite square rooms here, but there's nothing saying that in Doom you have to do that. Doom is sector-based and it can handle any shape, so feel free to go wild. But a lot of buildings, you'll notice in real life, are quite right-angly, so it's up to you. Strike a balance. That'll do. Okay, so now we've built our 3rd room, 4th room maybe, I don't know, depends on how you count them. And this is going to be our door. So first of all I'm going to prepare these textures here. I'm going to make those doorstop. And we're going to hit Ctrl-Shift-R to get rid of any texture alignment I've already done. In the middle I'm going to use door track, which is a nice texture that suggests that a door is sliding up and down on a rail. So there is an automatic way to do doors in GZ Doom Builder. There's a form that can just do it all for you, but I'm doing it from first principles here just to show you how a door is constructed. If you think about what a door is, it's the opposite of what I did here. A door, if we want it to raise, is actually a sector that has its floor and ceiling at the same height at floor level. So what we're seeing now is the upper bit of that line depth, and we're going to raise that into the ceiling so that we have temporary passage through. So I'm going to use a big door texture there. Something you might have noticed if I just fly onto the floor here, something you might have noticed is that as this door raises, the texture on the sides raises as well, and that's because Doom draws textures from the top of a line down the way, and it's going to keep updating that as the door moves. I can do it smoothly here by holding the Shift key. So, to fix that, we can use the lower unpegged property, and the upper unpegged and lower unpegged just affect the way that Doom draws textures. Lower unpegged here means that the texture below is going to start being drawn from the bottom up, so as the door moves, it's not going to move with it. You can see this texture still has that. I'm going to use the L shortcut to apply the lower unpegged to this side as well, and now we've got our door moving up and down. Okay, so I'm going to close that door from the start. Alright, I'm going to flip this line def because the ticks on these line def mean that this is the front side of the line def. Doom, if there's a sector on both sides of a line def, you need to think about both sides and where the player's seeing it from, or something like that. I'll explain a bit later. Traditionally, in vanilla Doom certainly, you could only activate the front side of a line def, so a door should have its spikes pointing outwards so the player can interact with it. I don't think that's actually necessary in GZ Doom, but that's the way it used to work. So I'm going to hit F on that one to flip that one outside. So let's select both of these lines, and this time we want the player to be able to interact with these lines and for the sector immediately behind those lines to be affected. So let's go and browse these again. Door. There are several different door actions: close, open, raise, locked, raise. Those were in the default Doom. Door generic is a bit more flexible, and it's provided by UDMF, so we're going to use that. Alright, this time for sector tag, we're going to leave that at 0, because 0 is a special value that means don't try to activate a remote sector, just do it on the other side of wherever activated this line def. So if the player comes here and activates that line, then the door is going to raise because this sector is the door. Movement speed can be normal. Type is whether the door opens then closes, it opens and stays open, and so on. Delay, the delay before the door closes, and lock. So we want this door to only be openable by a blue key card, or really any blue key. Doom has 2 types of blue keys. I don't think default Doom ever discriminates on which key you actually have, but stranger things have happened. Alright, as for actions, we want this one to be repeatable. We don't want the player to only be able to open and close this door once. Even official maps sometimes have that mistake. The yellow door on Deimos Lab, I think it is, can only be opened once, so you've got to hurry up and get through it. We want to be repeatable, and we want this to happen when player presses use, just like we did for the Switch. Alright. Now, that's only openable by the blue key, but it's kind of impolite to the player to not give them any indication that this is a blue key door. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into Vertices Mode. We're going to double-click around here to give us some more vertices and split up these line defs. So there, we've got some thin little bits of line that we can use. Control right-click, and we're going to apply door blur to those ones. And that, traditionally, is just the way you indicate that a door is blue. There are certain other ways you can do it. You could put blue torches next to it. There's a blue skull texture, but the conventions are kind of established by now. You can do what you like. Alright, I might want to retexture this room. Let's make this room entirely computer using the comp tall texture. Again, Shift and click to select all the textures adjacent around me. And I'm going to Control-Shift-R, Control-A just to get that continuous computer look. Alright. maybe we want some enemies to pour out of here as well. Just when you think you're making progress, keep presenting the enemy with presenting the player. I'm sorry, players, with new enemies as they keep going. We can also scatter some ammunition around. We didn't really provide the player with any shells, so we can stick some shotgun shells up here. If they've got hurt, we can give them a stim pack in this little alcove we made. Maybe one over there as well. And to get them to be able to end the level, which is somewhat unrealistically short just now, but it'll do for our purposes, maybe we want another switch to be somewhere in this room. Let's put it down on this wall. This is just going to be a 64 wide texture. We're going to use our faithful doorstop here, because I do like this for just signifying borders. And again, we're going to make an SW1 texture, and we'll use the skull one. Alright, so this looks like it's the right height to accommodate that texture, so we don't need to do any offsets. It is polite as well, though not necessary by any means, to give the player an indication that by going here they are going to exit the level. And sometimes we can do that with the exit sign. So this has repeated itself all up in there, so we're going to just drag this all the way down, or maybe put a little exit sign there. Copy, paste, align, and there we go, we've got our little exit sign. Alright. Oh, sorry, I just bashed you in the face there while scratching my face. Okay, so we've got our player start. Let's make this a little more interesting as well by adding some lights in. And in the original Doom, these light objects were they didn't really exist as dynamic lights. They were just objects that looked a bit bright. GZ Doom enhances those by automatically attaching a dynamic light, a sort of aura of light around them, which really enhances the look. I can't actually remember what the name of this object is, but I'm going to do my utmost to remember. Is it Tall Techno Pillar? You know what? That one I'll do. Alright, so let's put those near the player as he comes in. Alright. And you know what? We can just copy and paste this computer here and spruce up this wall a bit while I'm at it. Alright, let's see if that worked. Well, we don't have the upper and lower textures on that wall, so that's easily fixed. Okay. And you can do all kinds of enhancements now. Just go mad with it. We can put in maybe some ceiling lights here. Let's do a 128 wide square. We're going to knock this up a bit. We're going to put step texture around there. We're going to change that to T light, maybe some of these. You'll notice that depending on where you draw the ceiling, Doom defaults to having all the ceiling and floor textures on the strict 64x64 grid. If you're doing the original Doom engine, you can't change that, but fortunately we're in UDMF where we can change them arbitrarily, exactly like we did the wall textures earlier with Shift and the arrow keys. Alright, so that looks like a set of lights here, and maybe we should control and... is it control and mouse wheel? Yes, it is. To maybe just raise that sector brightness and give the impression that these lights are shining on the floor. If we want to spruce it up a bit more, let's put another sector around there, and we're going to do the same thing here. Sector brightness a bit up, so we've got this kind of gradient. Alright. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so we've got our little techno room. There's a shotgun. We're going to slaughter some baddies. Here's a useful looking switch. And now our imps are free. Fairly easily dispatched, if I'm being honest. We've got our blue key. Here's some more imps for us. And there we go. So that, in brief, is how you build a basically functional and reasonably attractive Doom map. If you do want to have a go, I would absolutely love to see your efforts. If you need further help, the Z Doom community has this very extensive wiki. They're really nice people on the forums, they're really helpful, and they're really knowledgeable as well. So if you do want to try your hand at making a 3D game, I think this is such a satisfying engine to do it in. And it's just a lot of fun as well. That is the end. Now, that's ruined the ending of the video a bit, hasn't it? Because, guess what I didn't do with this switch? I didn't put the action on it. So let's go back into Linedefs mode. And let's go to our action here. So we're going to browse actions again, we're going to go to end, we're going to end normal. End normal means we exit the level, end secret means we exit and go to the secret level in the whatever's defined for this WAD. So we're going to end normal, we're going to make this, it doesn't need to be repeatable, and it's going to be when the player presses use. So this is a good opportunity to give you an example of what the other options do. All these down here let you play through with no monsters on. And that lets you stay in peace to just admire your architecture, look at any alignment problems you might have, and just to generally have a more relaxed stroll through your Doom level and see it in the game. That, this time, is the end, and have a great time making some Doom levels of your own.